I've played many versions of Metal Gear Solid 3 over the years that have been excellent, and Delta, right now, just isn't one of them. Now look, that might sound harsh, because the truth is, a lot of the game is very good. It sets out to do what it's supposed to, which is a one-to-one version of Metal Gear Solid 3, but with some tweaks, some small quality of life changes, a new control scheme, which, take it or leave it, just the overall sprucing up you would expect. The problem is that in that one-to-one recreation and sprucing up, it does fumble some pretty important parts of re-releasing a game, and it's doing that for $80. And I'm going to be as honest as I can. For $80, I expect absolute perfection. I expect this game to run flawlessly, to have no issues, and if it is intended to be a one-to-one recreation, I expected that at least in Legacy mode, it would play exactly like Metal Gear Solid 3, but with a fresh coat of paint. And that just isn't the case. There are issues with Delta that I hope will be fixed down the line, and probably when they are fixed, you'll be able to pick it up for a discounted price, which is why I can't recommend it yet. Because otherwise, the most important part about taking a beloved game, one of the greatest games of all time, if you ask, I say most people that were around to play it back when it launched, a lot of the most important things have been nailed. There is passion and reverence here for the tiniest details and the strangest Kojima-isms that you can imagine. There is love, actual love, poured into this version to keep it faithful with all of the strange things that make this one of the classics of gaming. And for the most part, it does do what it sets out to do. For better or for worse, it just is Metal Gear Solid 3, but with some quirks and issues that I think really shouldn't be there for the $80 price tag. And that is the shortest way that I can explain it, but there's a lot more to this. There's the fact of those issues and if they will matter to you. There is the fact that, hey, this is still a PS2 game, and have they done enough to make this something that newer generations are going to want to play to make it the definitive, more accessible version of it? Or did they preserve it well enough that the old heads like me are just going to love it from start to finish because it's so faithful? Is this something that needed to be done, and is this the way that we should be making remasters or remakes or remixes or whatever you want to call them, and should they be priced at these prices? There's quite a lot to dive into. But before we do, hi, I'm Mug, and if you're new here, welcome, and if you're not new here, welcome back. It's great to see you. You are looking fantastic. You might as well be a Carotan, the way that you caught my eye from across the room. As per usual, remember, if you like the video, hit the like button, because that helps the video spread throughout the insanity of the YouTube algorithm. And also, if you like what I do when it comes to news, reviews, previews, and essays on the industry, think about subscribing. Just don't do it yet. Wait until later. Wait until you make sure that what I offer is worth it. With all of that out of the way, there's some questions to answer, and the most important one, of course, is, are we still in a dream? Let's get into it. So let's get all of the good out of the way, because there is quite a lot of good depending on how you want to look at it. Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta is Metal Gear Solid 3 with a fresh coat of paint. The things that you care about, from the voice actors being the same and the script and the music, everything is still there. The level design with every little corner, every little thing you remember, every little secret, and yes, every little weird quirk that you could find about how doing this one thing in this one obscure area triggers this crazy secret. All of that stuff has been preserved lovingly. And especially, of course, it's going to depend on your own opinion, but I think that as a movie that some people call a lot of Kojima's works, it looks great. They have been incredibly faithful to every single camera angle, every single little flare that he puts in, and they have put it all in there. The game is also very faithful from other perspectives. So you have things like the Legacy mode that allows you to play the game top down as the original release of Metal Gear Solid 3 allowed you to, not subsistence, which added the third-person over-the-shoulder camera. They also have graphical filters, a ton of them, but the most important being the new normal or neutral kind of color correction, and the original more orange tintish color correction under Legacy if you want the game to look just like it did from the color perspective while still having those updated graphics. Everything that you'd expect a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 to have without touching anything is there. Although there are some bells and whistles that I would expect for $80 especially, including things like frame rates above 60 FPS, or ultra-wide or even super ultra-wide support would be greatly appreciated, and not having technical issues. But when it comes to the game itself, outside of performance and some of those more hardware-geared options, this is MGS3. That is both a pro and a con for some people, and that means it's a PS2 game. It's a pretty old game from a different design school, before the time of instant gratification to make sure that players' brains were constantly engaged. Konami has now done 2 remakes, and the Silent Hill 2 remake by Bloober, which was incredibly well received, to me does a lot more in modernizing Silent Hill 2 and making it accessible for a newer generation while still being very authentic to what Silent Hill 2 is. It just has a little bit more of creative expression there in how it's modernized. While Metal Gear Solid 3, some of its modernizations actually make it more clunky and more difficult than the original, while still having the design sensibilities of then, which means this is a game that rewards careful observation and patience, just waiting and just looking at things to then make decisions and trying to be creative in almost emergent systems that it has. For some people, that's great, but for other people, that means that you're just going to be sitting there, spending a lot of time waiting for caution and evasion meters to go down. You're gonna be sitting there waiting to heal. Heck, if you really wanted to, you could just sit there and wait for certain bosses to die. For a lot of people, that's great, because you don't want Metal Gear Solid 3 to be touched in any way. You want it to stay exactly the same. And my stance on this sort of stuff is pretty clear. The original game is still there, it holds up pretty damn well, and to be honest, Metal Gear Solid 3 is available in pretty much any way you want it at this point, and in easily preservable ways. It's not going anywhere. Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta doesn't do that much compared to other remakes, remasters in bringing the game up to modern accessibility. And the retroness of the game is still there, and the clunkiness of an old game is still there. And actually, some of those changes to allegedly modernize it make it not clunkier, but yes, jankier. So speaking of that, let's get into some of the negatives, because this is what really pissed me off. For starters, I had a ton of graphical issues with the game when I booted it up. If anybody else is getting weird shimmers, although maybe one of the patches has already dealt with that, turn your bloom settings down. Apparently that's what did it for me after just manually going through a lot of stuff. But the graphical issues were the smallest of the problem. Metal Gear Solid 3 is a stealth game, and it is a slightly demanding stealth game at that, especially if you want to take it as such. That's one of the great things about the Metal Gear Solid games, is that while many of them can be fairly short, it's about the challenge of each room and memorizing them and nailing the perfect path, be that because you want to up the difficulty, you want to clear the game without ever being seen, or maybe you want to clear the game while just eliminating every single guard possible. That's really all up to you. The problem is that while a lot of the game has been perfectly redone when it comes to each room kind of being its own little sandbox of a puzzle that you can find different ways to overcome depending on the self-imposed or imposed by the game's rating system rules that you have, a lot of the underlying systems don't work as well. Let's start off with the first thing, performance, which is something that they will arguably fix. The game is locked at 60 FPS, it doesn't have ultra-wide or super ultra-wide support on PC, and that 60 FPS lock is not often hit. It goes down and can be choppy in weird spots for no reason, be that in combat, which might be a little bit more expected, or in my case, just because I looked at a specific corner and the frames went down to 20 FPS. I don't think that's acceptable in 2025 for a PC port or for a console. This game should run better, and it should have options that allow me to tweak it all the way up to 120 FPS, or, you know, play it in ultra wide or super ultra wide. Those are the things we would expect, especially considering that we're supposed to be making the ultimate version of the game. Beyond that, some of the issues with the new control scheme that also translate to legacy mode are not good. Whether you like or don't like the new control scheme, and a lot of that will have to do with how many times you've played Metal Gear Solid 3, or if you're playing it for the first time, there is a weird clunkiness to some of it, be that the way that Snake moves, or be that specifically the way that you kind of press up against walls is very different. There's just a lot going on here with the controls that make it feel less snappy than the original. More naturalistic and organic, the way that Snake moves and the weight to his movements, a lot of that, to me, is very good. But the fact that you don't have the same precision that you had in the original is kind of a big screw up, because that is a very big part of the game, and the predictability of everything matters a lot. And that's the biggest issue I've encountered, which is the AI. Look, running through this game and just kind of enjoying it is one thing, especially if you're not hunting for specific achievements or trying to get no alerts. And I think that in that context, you can forgive some of the issues. But if you know MGS, there's issues. The biggest is that guard AI is all over the place. They will be absurdly stupid and not know that you are right in front of them. Or they will spot you from a mile away from a vertical elevation difference at a diagonal, magically, from distances that are way, way unacceptable compared to the original game, in ways that feel like the game is bugging out. And because of how the game works, the instant that you are seen, you are triggering an alarm, and again, depending on what you're aiming for, you will have to reload the area, which, by the way, is incredibly fast. I give thanks for that. It's like 2 seconds to reload to your latest save, but still not ideal. I'm not sure what is actually happening with the AI, or what Virtuous has done with their weight system for what the AI evaluates in order to spot you, whether it has to do with lighting or the camouflage rating or noise or how many other factors, considering that this is, again, a pretty complicated game with a lot of different mechanics all working together. But the fact is that I have had a 90% camouflage rating and been on the ground next to an enemy, and they have immediately spotted me. And I have also been with a 30% camouflage rating, crouching to the side of an enemy, and it's like I'm invisible. That sort of inconsistency really harms the experience, and that's just on being predictable in what exactly counts as you being spotted or not. We haven't even started on when the AI just outright breaks, as you can see in this wonderful clip from my recording sessions.
Come in, HQ.
This is HQ.
Patrol here. Unable to determine the problem.
Oh, I can determine the
Understood.
problem. I can
Return to your
determine it
position.
right now. It's not difficult. To me, the fact that I have to deal with these issues, that I have to be frustrated at some of these things, that the performance is not up to par, that I don't have these options, and that the AI can be frustrating in what is a 1-to-1 remake of an incredibly old game at this point, for $80 is what keeps me from outright recommending this experience. Beyond that, though, it is also the fact that I'm not sure if this game is made for the people who already played it and want to experience it again, be that with its sensibilities of the time and all, or if it's intending to bring new people to it. And kind of no matter who you are, some of the systems and issues that are present here are not going to be liked by either of them, no matter how much you want to put on your nostalgia-colored glasses. And that's what makes this entire situation and my review of it so frustrating. I adore Metal Gear Solid in general. It was an incredibly formative series for me. I have a Metal Gear tattoo. And I want to say that this is a worthwhile game. If you have reverence for the series, you're going to enjoy a lot of what is here, including stuff like Snake vs. Monkey or the Nightmare sequence that they have lovingly recreated. Again, there is a lot of passion put into this game, into this version of a classic. But I just can't find it acceptable for it to have a ton of patch notes on day one to prevent crashes in crazy situations. Get me here, all right? These are such crazy situations, like specific ways of calling on the codec. Sometimes you call on the codec and the game crashes. That needed to be patched day one, and hey, good job that they patched it, but it shouldn't have needed to be patched. The AI shouldn't be awkward and difficult to predict or to understand. I shouldn't have to worry about performance or have something that feels like not the definitive edition of this very remake for $80 to $90 on release day. I shouldn't have to deal with those things. I should be able to just enjoy what is a lovingly created modern version of the same PS2 game I love. And because it's not all the way there in doing that is the reason I can't recommend it yet. I have to say, wait for some of those patches. Maybe some people are going to figure out stuff. Maybe in the case of PC, there will be mods to fix some of this. We already have frame unlockers on PC. And maybe by the time that all of those things have been solved, you can also get it for what I consider a more acceptable price, because I'm having a tough time swallowing $80 for a one-to-one remake. Even if a ton of attention or care or work was put into it, some of that work maybe not panning out as well as you might have hoped in the case of gameplay, but we just saw companies like Microsoft back down from the $80 mark because it's too much for the current market, and now Konami wants us to pay $80 for a one-to-one recreation of Metal Gear Solid 3? It seems excessive, especially for what's on offer. If I had zero caveats, if I could just sit here and say, this is perfect and it's going to make everybody happy, maybe there's a conversation to be had about the price there, but I can't. I actually can't say that. And Konami's currently the only one that's holding on to that price point. Silent Hill F is coming out this next month for $80. Everybody I've heard talk about it, by the way, has great things to say, but I still think those are high prices, and I am going to be more critical of a game when the prices are that high. And now, in a statement that's going to make some people confused or angry, I actually support Konami, just not in their prices. For those of you who are unaware, when Konami kind of let go Hideo Kojima and he left and did Death Stranding, and then they kept the Fox engine, one of the probably best in-house engines ever made, and relegated it to Pro Evolution Soccer, Konami's overall goodwill with gamers disappeared, and they also decided that they had spent too much on gaming for their returns, and so they focused on gaming but of a different variety and started making only pachinko machines because that's where the money is or was. The fact that it's been a pretty long time since all of those things happened with Kojima, with Konami's decisions, with Silent Hills and all of that, and they've gone from that and moved on. They've found a studio to remake MGS3 with the love and reverence that I think it deserves without touching anything that Kojima fanatics would get mad at. They found the team to do the excellent Silent Hill 2 remake. They're working on Silent Hill F. I want Konami to come back. I want great games to exist and be made, and especially certain IP that is still very close to a lot of people's hearts to still be there and be worked on in the right ways and be brought back. I just don't think that maybe $80 for Delta is the best way to do it. So my official verdict on this is, wait a bit. Patches for those issues that it has will probably come along with a price drop, and I think that at that point, it's a great purchase. Whether you are a person that loves the original or you've never played Metal Gear Solid, this is technically, chronologically, the first entry in the series, so it's a great jumping off point. Just be very aware that you're going into a game that is old in its sensibilities, and you might find yourself kind of frustrated by some of those things. I personally still find it charming and enjoy it, but hey, that might be because across MGS3 and Subsistence, I probably have like 150 clears on the game. But even with that said, this gets a not yet from me. I've been Mug. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, remember, hit the like button. And if you want more from me with news, reviews, and essays on the world of gaming, subscribe. Helps a ton. Now you can judge better if it was worth it. A very special thanks to the members of the Wall, be they members here on YouTube or members of the Patreon. More info on that down below, but I am incredibly thankful to you guys pretty much every single day. With that, go out there, enjoy some great video games, maybe even some Metal Gear Solid Delta if you don't have any patience and if you've got the money to burn, I guess. But hey, good game, just give it a little bit more time. And as always, I'll see you again very soon.